Yellow nutsedge is our weed of the month. So I'm going to talk about some of the characteristics, I'm going to talk about the common name and how the clues are in the name, and we're also going to talk about the eat it and treat it section. Some of the other common names for yellow nutsedge are nutgrass, tiger nut, earth almond. There's some clues in there about the edibility of it. The scientific name is Cyperus esculentus. Cyperus, you might have heard of Latin botanical nomenclature. Well, a lot of the words are Greek, and this is another of the Greek words. Cyperus is the Greek word for sedge. Interestingly, in the Cyperus genus is papyrus. You've probably learned about papyrus in grade school and how the Egyptians used it to make the first form of paper. Papyrus is Cyperus papyrus. This is Cyperus esculentus. We talked about Cyperus meaning sedge, esculentus means edible. So later on, I'll talk to you about the edibility and the surprise food reveal. The family that this plant is in is Cyperaceae. It's a very large family of sedges. So Cyperus is one type of sedge. Another sedge you might be common with are the carex species. One is Everillo, it's a yellow one. You might even use it in your planters and in your garden for a nice pop of yellow color. That's in the same family as yellow nutsedge. This looks like a grass. It has parallel leaf veins, as even sort of grass-like flowers. It's a monocot-like grass, and that is based, monocots are based on the parallel vein leaf structure and how the cotyledons go out. We explain a little bit more about that on our blog post, but I'm gonna just keep on moving because it's gonna be a little bit of a longer segment. It's a sedge, not a grass, and we need to know that in order to treat it. To eradicate it, we don't treat it like our grassy or broadleaf weeds. It's treated differently, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. Let's talk about some of these botanically fascinating aspects. The habit, it's pretty vast. Donna, will you show a picture in the lawn? It kind of shoots up as these innocuous little clumps, but below ground, the rhizome spreads. So it starts with one little clump, the rhizome spread, a little nutlet forms, little bulb forms, and it shoots up through the grass, and it can form a network of about a 10-foot or larger patch of your yellow nutsedge. It's very hard to eradicate. So that's a little bit about the habit on the larger scale. So let's focus in on the habit. It starts as a little bulb. If you can pan in on this Alex, and see, it's a little bulb, much like you would see the onions in your lawn. Onions are an entirely different family. Believe it or not, onions are in the lily family. This is in the Cyperaceae family. So you've got the little bulb, and then you'll see a little bit of brown. You might hear of purple nutsedge. That's a look-alike. This is not why it's called purple nutsedge. Purple nutsedge actually has purple flowers, whereas these have the yellowish-greenish flowers. A little more about let's go into the stem rather. We talked about the bulb. Right straight up from the stem, let me phrase that better. The stem is triangular in shape. The triangular shape, and there's a cross section in my fingers showing 3 sides. We've talked about some of the other weed of the month, broadleaf weeds that are in the mint family that have square stems. Of course, most stems are round. These are super unique in having triangular stems. The triangle part, you can feel it, starts right at the bulb, goes all the way up to the flower section, and then these little flower stalks are also triangular. I'm going to talk about the roots. The roots go straight down, just like typical roots do. You're going to see some brown ones, and the newest ones will be white. I call that out because this little guy right here, that's the rhizome. It's straighter, and you can see it kind of going out at an angle. The roots are kind of crooked shape growing. This rhizome is going to grow out, and a tuber is going to form. However, on this plant, we call the tubers nutlets. Tubers, potatoes. A potato is a type of tuber. It's a storage organ. It's what makes this one of the reasons this weed is so pernicious. Those tubers can live in the ground for years before and survive before they sprout again. So we've got the rhizome that grows out, another tuber forms and another bulblet forms, just like we saw in the lawn that can make it spread out for 10 feet or longer. The leaves, they're pretty typical, you know, they look like that grassy weed. They're super glossy. That glossy coat makes it hard for herbicides to stick to. We'll go into that a little bit later as well. Now we're going to go up to the flowers. The flowers, you can see it looks like there's leaves here. These are actually called bracts. They are not flowers. If you're familiar with poinsettia and the showy red part of a poinsettia, now there are pink and white forms of poinsettia as well. Those are actually leaves. I'm sorry, those aren't actually leaves. Those are actually bracts, just like these. A bract is a type of modified leaf. So right near all the flowers come out bracts. There's going to be 3 very large visible ones, and then there might be some smaller ones as well. The flower head is an umbel. If you know Queen Anne's lace or fennel or parsley, an umbel is usually it's kind of a dome-shaped flower. But what makes it an umbel, or one of the reasons it's an umbel, is these stems are of unequal length on a Queen Anne's lace. That's what makes it a dome. These are of unequal length. You can see there's shorter ones here, longer ones here, but they don't make a dome. They're just kind of loose and floppy. There are many lookalikes. We talked about the carex species can be mistaken for sedges, carex are a type of sedge, can be mistaken for cyperus sedges. There's also another common one I'm going to get here. This one was growing in a patch of iris at my house. This is called globe sedge. It looks a lot like yellow sedge. It's shorter though, it's darker green. It also forms more of a clump. It was just intertwined with the irises. It has short rhizomes that make it a big clump. It doesn't send them out as far. Also the flowers, and here are some here, they're a little different. They're rounder. And we'll talk a little bit about the flowers here on the nutsedge, the yellow nutsedge. You can see they're a lot bigger, and Donna has a close-up of them as well. They start out yellowish green, but they turn straw colored. It's a bigger flower than the globe sedge. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the life circumstances of the yellow nutsedge. It is a perennial. That is something to keep in mind if you're wanting to treat it with pre-emergent herbicides. It is not going to treat existing infestations, but it will prevent new infestations if you have a particularly bad problem. This plant also loves hot temperatures, even though it grows in so many places, even in cooler climates up to Canada. In my garden in Zone 8, it doesn't really appear till June, when the air temperatures and the soil temperatures are good and hot, baking hot. This plant is going to come shooting up right through the lawn. It's going to outgrow the lawn. So even if you're mowing regularly, for my zoysia on a weekly basis, I mow every 7 days, it still shoots right up. We talked about that with Dallas grass. That can make it challenging to control as well. So it's hard to control just by mowing. Yellow nutsedge is a great lover of wet soils. It grows naturally in ditches all over the place, and there it will get about 2 feet high. I think of it as knee-high to a little bit taller. Some of the other sedges, like I just showed you, the globe sedge, is a shorter plant. It also likes wet, compacted soils, and it can tolerate dry soils. You will see it in dry soils, but you will most likely see it in your wet lawns, wet areas of your lawns. And want to make sure you realize too, this plant loves full sun. So hot baking weather and full sun, this plant is going to be thriving. I don't really see it in shadier areas. The eat it or treat it section now is the most fun section of the day, because the surprise reveal is that the nutlets, the tubers, we call them nutlets on this plant, and I don't have one in my hand here because I just yanked this up this morning. Horchata. You've probably seen it on a menu in a Spanish restaurant or a Mexican restaurant. It's spelled horchata, but it's pronounced horchata, and it's a delicious beverage made from this nut. Now, it is a different strain or variety that is cultivated for bigger nutlets, but technically you can make horchata from this weed in your lawn. There are also many other related cyperus species that are edible. It's an interesting journey you can go on just studying the edibility of this plant and related species. So about manual, I alluded to yanking this up. I only had the globe, I almost called it globe artichoke, the globe sedge with me from my garden. But walking out of the hotel this morning, I saw this growing. And I didn't even break stride, I just yanked it up. It is that easy to yank up. However, left behind were the nutlets, so it's gonna sprout from there again, but it's super easy and satisfying to pull this weed up. It is a temporary solution though. If you want to treat it long term, you're gonna have to either correct your soils, stop watering as much in an area. Maybe you are overwatering. Most warm season lawns, they just need about 1 inch of water a week. If you're watering more, scale back on that. Also, if you have a low-lying area where it's thriving, you can treat it out, and to make sure it doesn't come back, correct that soil. Put in some topsoil, elevate it, correct your water, get water draining towards a ditch, not pooling up in the middle of your lawn. And really, the most effective for this weed, if you need to get it out of your lawn, is the chemical route. Pre-emergent herbicides, the over-the-counter type available to homeowners, aren't really going to work with this plant. We talked earlier about the importance of determining, a sedge is different than a broadleaf weed or grassy weed. It's a sedge, it's not a grass. Pre-emergent herbicides to treat this plant aren't really available to the homeowner. You're going to need to call a pro to come in and treat it with a pre-emergent herbicide. And because of the glossy leaf we talked about, they're going to need to use a surfactant as well. They probably already know that. But still, pre-emergent herbicide is going to be used when it's the worst of infestations. Probably the best way to get rid of it is going to be to use a post-emergent herbicide. We sell that. There are many common types that are very effective. We sell Sedge Hammer here in easy to use individual packets. This packet also contains a surfactant, which is what you need. We talked about that. So you can see the little plus there. Sorry, that's hard to do on a camera. The plus there means it's Sedge Hammer plus pre-emergent. I said that wrong again. It's Sedge Hammer plus a surfactant. So it's going to help the herbicide stick to the leaves. You'll see Sedge Hammer out there without the plus. If you get that, be sure you also purchase separately a surfactant to help you eradicate this. And like I said, there are many other types, and when you're looking for a post-emergent, make sure it's labeled for sedge and as safe for your lawn. Not all these pre-emergents and post-emergents are safe for your type of lawn. So always read the label and make sure it's safe for your type of lawn. I can't reiterate that enough. And if you'd like to know more, there's a little bit more on our blog post. We'll have this linked in the bottom in the notes section so you can read more.